Yes.
All right. Okay, I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the Bylaws Committee of the Niles, Maine District Library on April 12th of 2024.
What time is it?
10 o'clock.
All right, I'm going to do roll call. President Keene,
Present.
Vice President Trunkel,
Here.
and I, Executive Director Valerie Marshall, am also here.
Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So for public comment, we have Elliot Osherman.
As compared to my usual bunch of non-statements and copies to everybody, just a quick comment. I have in the past read the bylaws, policies, and procedures and rules. Included in those bylaws, policies, and rules are several occasions where a time frame has been set for the board to do something, or for the board in consultation with the executive director to do something. For example, acquisition policy needs to be reviewed. According to those documents, policy is that acquisition procedures are to be reviewed no less than every 2 years. To my knowledge, that has not been done in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Therefore, my suggestion is that the board adopt a policy where anytime a new individual is elected to presidency, or anytime that a president is re-elected, that the president is required to read all the then current bylaws, policies and procedures and rules and sign a statement to that effect that either it has been done in the last few days or it will be done in the next few days before the next scheduled board meeting. Thank you and good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, new business is just the whole reason that we're here is our first meeting of the Bylaws Committee, so we are ready to discuss our bylaws and compare them to other libraries' bylaws and find out where we think we need to make changes and things like that. So, open the floor to any comments. Do we want to start with our own bylaws?
Yeah, I mean, I would say we look at our bylaws and maybe if we see something in another bylaw that we like or see what we want to tweak in ours or what the most important thing is, because, I mean, this isn't going to be a one meeting,
No.
one committee meeting thing to fix our bylaws, but our bylaws do need fixing. So, yeah, I would say maybe we just start at point one and work our way down and talk through as many as we can today, and then we go to the next thing next time and go from there.
I agree. There's also going to be things that are not currently in our bylaws that we may wish to add that we see in other bylaws. We're also not restricted to only following other libraries' bylaws. We can put in place whatever we think is reasonable for this library based on past practices and things that are happening at the library. It's important that as a committee, we move forward in a way that we think is reasonable for our library and our community.
Good point.
Yeah, and just so the public understands, while this is a bylaw committee, and there are 2 board members here, we only should bring this to the full board like, we can't make a bylaw in place without having the full supermajority of at least 5 person voting yes to make that bylaw go in place. So, just
Right.
so, yeah, nobody thinks that we could just make this committee
No,
ourselves.
we're just going to make recommendations to the
Correct.
board.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so number 1 is the introductory statement. Should I read it out?
I don't think we need to. I don't have any concerns about that section of our bylaws.
I don't either.
I did not either. I didn't have concerns actually until we got to 6. So I don't know if any of you guys have concerns with 2 is name, 3 is establishment, 4 is elections, 5 is membership.
I do want to bring up a point that may be worth discussing. As a district library, I know under membership, we have a 6-year term for trustees. It is possible under the law as a district library, if the board votes on it, that terms can be shortened to 4 years. So it may be something, if that would be appropriate for this library, worth considering.
6 years is a long time.
Well, 6 years is a long time, and I know that I know legally we can't have any term limits on
Right.
library trustees. But,
Unless you, as a district, it's in the district library law that if the board votes to change the terms from 6 years to 4 years, that is legal. Those are
but
the,
you can't, yeah, but we can't put term limits
No,
on
no
it.
term limits, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, 6 years is a long time. I mean, this has been 1 year, it's been a long year. I don't know.
It doesn't have to be something that, even as a committee, we make a decision on. I just wanted to point it out since we're
Yeah.
going through this process.
Yeah, maybe that's one of those things we bring up to the full
Yeah.
board
Mhm.
of if people, I mean, the problem that you have now is that you still, even if you made that change, you still have a couple of people that are 6 years right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have that overlap and you'd have to probably relook at when elections are to keep things staggered
Right.
correctly.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm on a 4-year term because it was an unfulfilled term, but
Mhm.
you know, then it would be 6. Yeah, we'd have to look at how that works, because like yours would be 6 and you and Umair are 6, but then it would turn to 4, and how does that make, because you don't want to have 5 or 6 seats up at once. That's the last thing you want to have happen.
If that's something you'd like me to research, I can talk to the Cook County Clerk's office and see exactly how that would work, if it
Yeah.
was something we wanted to recommend to the board.
I mean, honestly, that's something I don't want you to worry about. Oh, I mean, I know everybody's terms when they expire, and I can build a spreadsheet and see what it looks like. That could take me 10 minutes to do.
Oh, not the terms currently, but I mean, if there were a vote by the board to change from 6-year terms to 4-year terms,
Yeah.
whether or not it affects the currently elected terms or how it affects the rotation.
No, it
Yeah.
would affect it going forward. Like
Mhm.
Becky would still be a 6-year term, because she won a seat on a 6-year
Yeah.
term. So
Yeah.
she would be 6 years
Okay.
no matter what. And so would Umair. But then it would be their seats going forward would become 4-year seats.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think if it became, yeah, so like in 3 years, which will be when I'm up, it's me, Patty, and Sue are up.
Mhm.
And then if you look 4 years past that, if we got let's say all 3 of us got reelected for 4 years, and we moved it to 4 years, then it would be me, Patty, Sue, Becky, Umair, all up in that one election. So that's 5 seats up in one election. So you're basically ripping a whole new board apart, and leaving nobody. You know, we would just have to see how we would work that out. I'm sure there's a way if people want to do 4 years instead of 6.
Why don't we just have, like, when we bring the recommendations to the board or ideas, it doesn't even have to be a recommendation.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
something that, you know, maybe we don't want to recommend, but just bring up and see how we feel about it. So I don't know if you need to research anymore until
Yeah.
we
Okay.
decide if that's something we want to do, but I think it's a good thing to bring up.
Yeah.
I agree
Absolutely.
with that, and I wasn't recommending one way or the other, it's just
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that I read in the law, so I
Nope.
wanted to bring it up.
That's perfect. I appreciate that. All right, yeah, I'm okay with 1 through 5 up until the years there.
Okay, there is something that's missing under organization of meetings, part E. We don't actually have listed here payment of the bills in the order of the agenda items, it's not listed there at all.
Well, and there's in E, well, did you have anything before E or?
I think all I had highlighted in 6A, the teleconference part, because I wanted to revisit that Appendix F myself to follow up, and I'm just wondering if anything has changed with those regulations since COVID and all that, because this hasn't been updated in a long time, so.
The last I looked, it's still like if you're out of town for business or like those are you talking about for that to be able to join that way?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's still the same 3 things
Okay.
that were in place prior to like that they put in during COVID.
okay,
So it's like I think it's business, if you're out of town for business, family emergency, or illness, I believe.
and
the
those are
3.
home rules, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's OMA rules. So those are the only 3 ways that you could partake, like, if you're on vacation, it doesn't count,
Okay.
so.
And my other question I had in my own head, when I was reading through C, that the regular meetings shall normally be held on the third Wednesday of the month at 7 PM. And for 2 years, we were meeting at 6:30, because how did they change that without
It was,
majority
I
vote?
believe it was in the
trustee manual?
trustee manual
Yeah.
that was in place, which is
So
no longer.
trustee manual should not have trumped the bylaws. We should never have been meeting at 6:30.
No, according to Dennis, bylaw, if there's a conflict between bylaws and trustee manual, the bylaws should have trumped.
Yes,
And that's why we took away the trustee manual.
right.
Which again, we'll look at that trustee manual. I would like to at some point
Mhm.
to incorporate some of that into
Sure.
bylaws.
Yeah, I think some of it was valuable.
But
Absolutely.
I think we should also, somewhere in here, and this may be a section that we add later, is that no matter what manual or anything else comes in place, nothing trumps the bylaws.
I would even say that, to consider putting a provision in the bylaws stating that no other policy will be made to govern board behavior. Most of the policies that exist outside of bylaws are related to how the library itself operates, but you could make a provision in the bylaws saying that only the bylaws will govern board behavior, and you can build in whatever you want here. That way, a document such as the trustee manual wouldn't even be created in the first place.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
But just because I've been getting some mail and things from the public about why we are doing this or why we threw out the trustee manual, and this is a good point right here, because the board was doing things against their own bylaws. So it's very important for us to go forward and reevaluate these things and make sure that we're doing what we said we were gonna do. And for the agenda stuff,
Can I
Yeah.
just go back
Oh,
to?
sure,
So
absolutely.
we may want to put, just so we're in compliance or our own thing, right? Like boardroom or the commons room downstairs, just because like in the winter, we moved away
Yeah.
from being up here.
mhm,
So we just may want to put boardroom or commons room of the main library building. That way, if we decide to have it in a different location, we know we're gonna have like a bigger audience, we're not gonna have that in this room.
You could also put in here, just for some flexibility, that it does say the board shall normally be
Right.
held on Wednesdays at 7 in the boardroom, and just put a provision here saying if the board votes for a different location or a different time frame, that will be posted online, or however we want to make the changes, just to notify
Mhm.
and still give flexibility to the
Yeah.
board.
Okay, yeah, just want to make sure that we have that ability to, if we want to meet downstairs during the winters and stuff, then we have that ability.
Yep.
Do we still want to keep it on Wednesdays? I mean, I think, I just,
yeah, you're just throwing it out there.
yeah, I mean, if we're gonna review all this, now's the time, if we want to
Right.
change it from the third Wednesday to the second Wednesday, like, do we want to move things around? You know, one of the things that I think about is like, we have it on the third Wednesday, but if we ever needed to have a second meeting in the same month, sometimes it becomes back-to-back weeks, and that's really not a lot of time to get things done, so do we move it to like the second Wednesday and then do second and fourth Wednesday if we need something,
I
or?
will say, I had meetings on the second week of the month at my previous library, which was much smaller. And in order to get the packet ready on time, having the meeting in the second week means that we'd have to have all of our statistics and everything ready in the first week, including finances. And here, I don't see that that's even possible, because we have to have the packet delivered by Friday of the first week of the month. Sometimes the month doesn't even start until like a Thursday.
Okay,
So I would prefer keeping it in the third week of the month. I understand the challenges for the board meeting multiple times in 1 month, but in order to get the packet ready, it's really a challenge to move it earlier.
okay.
That's interesting.
Well, then, we could always, if we ever need something, I guess we have to do it on the first Wednesday, give us, so that way we have time to review it as well, because sometimes those back-to-backs are really hard to review things and get things, like your head wrapped around what you're going into.
Yeah.
It was like, so I just want to make sure that we don't ever come into a situation where it's back-to-back weeks, because some of that is tough,
Yes, it is.
so
And what about the time, 7 o'clock?
I'm okay at 7 o'clock. I mean, I don't want to go earlier than that, honestly.
It was hard for when it was 6:30, it was hard for me to get here at 6:30.
Yeah, I mean, Umair's already said that he's customers on the West Coast, so he won't be able to make it before 7, so it's, you know, and I know I'm thinking of our board right now, but that's what we're dealing with, so I think 7 o'clock gives people a chance to put dinner on the table at home, have dinner themselves, and then get here.
I think
So-
it's, for working people, it's reasonable.
Yep.
And for the public as well, to be able to get dinner on the table if they're interested in coming.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So agenda items,
Well, I kind of like here that it says, you know, the regular meetings may include these things, but are not limited to the following items. And it also doesn't say that which is interesting, I don't know if it's good or bad, that it doesn't say that it has to go in this order. But I guess the question popping up in my head right now is, the agendas that we have now do not include all of these things. Like it doesn't have the approval of minutes. Oh, it does
Yeah,
have,
it does.
sorry, I'm thinking approval of agenda. It doesn't have approval of agenda, which I would like it to have. I guess, so this does look, okay, this is pretty much what we have, isn't it?
Except for payment of bills.
Right.
which is payment, I'm sorry, is payment of bills basically a subset for the treasurer's report though?
We've been having it as a separate section.
Okay.
And it's usually between public comment and treasurer's report, isn't it?
Mhm. It's before the treasurer's report.
Or before treasurer's. Have you ever been at a library that had approval of agenda before?
I have not, but I have seen it at other libraries.
What would we do? We would approve the agenda that we're gonna be doing that night?
Yeah, so if there's something that's on there that the board doesn't want on there, it can be taken off, right? And if there is something that you wanted on there that isn't on there, I need to look into it more, I guess. It's something that was in the back of my head, but I can bring it back up at a later time.
I know that I'll get negative feedback for this. I'd still like to see something with public comments being agenda items first and then anything else later on in the meeting. I just feel like focusing on the agenda items and people, so before you were here, I had asked if we could split public comment into 2. In the beginning of the meeting, it would be on agenda items only. And then later on, it could be on anything that anybody wanted to talk about, because sometimes we were having people that were coming talking about things that weren't relevant at all, and to take 3 or 5 minutes at that point it was, to just hear things that weren't relevant to anything that was on the agenda that night. I wanted to focus on our agenda stuff, and really it was, to me, more important to hear about what the public thought from an agenda standpoint, because we were gonna go talk about those things and vote on those things. So, you know, I've looked through some of this and I've looked around the other areas. There's a lot of places that do 2 different public comments. There's a lot of places that do 1, and they only do it at the end of the meeting. So I don't know what the right or wrong thing is. You know, I looked into the legal aspect of it, and we could do whatever we want with it.
Yeah.
I think we should have public comments in the beginning so we hear before we talk about the topics, but I'm not sure if it should just be on agenda items only or not, so.
That's something we can bring to the board again.
But I definitely think we should keep 1, no matter what, in the beginning where it is, so people don't have to sit there all night.
Yes.
But at the same token, agenda items are the most important thing to hear about before we start talking about everything. Otherwise, I'm okay with the whole order that we do everything in.
I have a question about other, because some libraries have an other section and some libraries don't. And I don't know that other, when it's talked about, if it's not on the agenda for the public to be prepared for what's being discussed, is something we still want to keep.
Well, I was actually gonna say, we don't have, I mean, there's a treasurer's report, there's an executive director's report, a secretary's report. But like, we don't even have on here for like you, a president's report.
And I
And
think there
we don't-
used to be one, right?
Well, it was on the trustee manual, which was
Okay.
different. So when we first took over as the board, we were all sworn in, this was blended with that, and it was, mixed and matched, and we like had to get back to this, because this was what the legal part was. So, I mean, there should be, I mean, really, there should be a trustee's report for every trustee to go through, like, if Patty wants to talk about the plan swapping, go through details of that, she shouldn't have to wait to other, it should be under, like, the trustee's report.
Mhm.
But, again, you're not gonna have all that information for the public beforehand. But that's one of those things, like in new business, yeah, we may have the topic, but nobody knows what we're gonna talk about, like in detail. Like sometimes I don't know what I'm gonna fully say on a topic until I'm in the meeting, so I don't know how you prepare.
Well, no, I talked to the OMA hotline yesterday, and what legally is required by the OMA is that we have an agenda, but not necessarily that we have a packet. We do the packet out of transparency for the sake of the public, but the full packet does not have to be prepared. According to OMA, there is no language about packet in the OMA. So as long as we have things on the agenda so that the public knows what topics we're going to be talking about, that's more what I mean. You don't have to have the full information available, but just the general topic that's being discussed, that's the recommendation, because then people can come prepared to make comment based on what's on the agenda, if that makes sense.
So then for like a treasurer's report, or the secretary's report, or president's, or even trustee reports, we would have to give you what we were gonna talk about ahead of time.
No, you can just have secretary's report, president's report.
Okay.
What I mean is if there's anything, any matter of discussion that gets brought up in the other section, either that or we make a plan when it's brought up in other to put it as an agenda item for the next month if it requires further discussion.
That's what I thought we used other for a lot of times,
A lot of times we have.
was to say publicly what we'd like on the agenda, because it wasn't being put on the agenda.
And
that still didn't happen, but yeah, that was kind of one of the ways we used that.
there are some other libraries that have a section for discussing next month's agenda. That is something that's possible for items to add to the next month. So it's something to consider as well.
That would help protect making sure that things get put on the agenda in the future.
It would help, I don't know, I mean, depending on the person who's,
But if
it helps everyone on the board and the public know what people are asking to be put on the agenda.
it does, and if it's not followed, then it's not followed in the bylaws, then that's, you know.
I mean, I think we're gonna get to a slippery slope, because people could ask for, I don't wanna think of some silly ridiculous thing to be put on the agenda that has no place of being in the agenda either,
Yeah,
And just because you ask for it in that part of the meeting doesn't mean that it has to be put on the agenda.
yeah, that could be a slippery slope, we may wanna think about that one. I would like to see, though, like a trustee report section maybe, where we all have the ability to, instead of using other maybe, just trustee report. I mean, we can even, I don't know if we could combine, like put the treasurer's report and secretary's report into that whole trustee report section, but just to see a trustee's report, because there's times that I wanna say things in other, and it's after executive session and stuff, and I'm just like, you know what, I forgot already what I even wanted to say. So if it was on there, then I'd be more dedicated to writing something down, and you don't have to have anything.
Yeah.
You could say, no, nothing this month, but at least then it gives each trustee an opportunity to have their specific meeting recognized and whatever they want to talk about.
Mm-hmm. There is
We have
also,
to maybe give a time limit to it also, no?
Oh, yeah, I would say no more than
Was it
probably
3 minutes?
3 or 5 minutes max, 3 to 5 minutes max.
there is also, and I'd have to look it up, I believe it's a requirement in the law. But anytime a committee meets, there is supposed to be a committee report, like at the next board meeting. And I don't know if we want to add that specifically to the agenda or just put it as part of trustee report. But at my previous library, we did have committee report in there.
Communications.
I used to actually put it under approval of minutes, because we're also going to have minutes for these committee meetings. And I would put it as, at my previous library, minutes from the committee and committee report. And then that's where we would talk about it. But we are supposed to have it there when we have committees.
I think I would be more comfortable, like you were saying, Becky, under communication, so that we could, I mean, there's a head of, any committee that we're gonna have should have a chairperson, so like Becky's the chair of this committee.
Mhm.
where communications, she could let everybody know, we could have any conversations you want. Because we are communicating it out to the public. I mean, I guess the question is, do we have to have those minutes from like today's meeting, do we have to have the minutes ready by next Wednesday? Probably not. We probably have some time to get those minutes ready, because in the past, we haven't had minutes always ready. It would just say working on minutes still, or.
I have to look it up. I believe it's within 30 days.
Yeah,
Okay.
like I think trying to have today's meetings for next week, or even in the packet that's being delivered tonight is
No.
not
Yeah,
feasible.
exactly. No, that's what I'm
But the
saying. So,
following, yeah.
yeah, there's no way it possibly happen. So
Mhm.
it's like, maybe we just put the communication on there, and then we get the minutes the next time. Like, like we could communicate that we met this coming Wednesday.
Right.
But then the minutes that we'll actually talk about won't happen until May,
Okay.
or the next meeting if we have one before then, hopefully just May.
So basically in the bylaws here though, under number 7, I could put 7A committee report. And that would definitely be part of
Well, you can
the
make it 8 since there's
communications.
no 8.
Yeah.
We go,
Isn't that convenient?
and there's no 10
Oh my
either.
God.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could make 8 committee
You
reports.
gotta laugh when it's bad.
I
Well,
mean, there's
that's
no
why
8
we're
and there's
looking
no
at
10.
it, right?
How does it get past?
Other than that, I'm okay with all of that part.
Okay.
So we're
Yeah.
keeping other as
I don't
other?
have a problem with other.
Okay,
I don't either.
okay.
In the committee section on A,
And that's an F and A, like, sorry, I'm just looking
Yeah.
at all the grammatical errors.
yeah, there's a lot of, like, that should be
Sorry.
section 7 instead of 7 being the quorum. Yeah, there's some, I mean, we could have the grammatical stuff fixed up. It says the president shall appoint the members of such committees, unless they are appointed by a board vote. I think that whether it's now or 10 years from now, I think it should be a board vote, so, because we may get into a situation where a president leans one way or leans another way, and then they just overload those committees with people that they know will go their way, versus a board bringing it up. That's just my opinion. I mean, at the end of the day, it's gonna be the board's decision. I just don't think we should let one person. For the last few years, there's been the problems of one person dictate. I don't want it to be like a dictatorship of just one person. So that's what my thing is how do we make it that every one of the board members has a vote or a say in that, I guess.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I don't feel like I wanna always be the one that has to decide that kind of stuff.
Or the other thing is, I'm sorry not to cut off your train of thought, but like, and I know we have time to get to the duties of the offices, but like, we do have a president, vice president, treasurer, and secretary, and the vice president role has nothing. So if we want to make that the job of the vice president to be in charge of committees, then we could do, we can add to the responsibilities to
Sure.
other board members, because putting everything on the president, not right. The treasurer's in charge of the bills and everything. The secretary may be able to take some other responsibilities too, but she, the secretary has responsibilities. The VP's only really there just in case you're not at a meeting,
Right.
then I take over. But that, and I've sort of made it my business to read all the agenda items, so that way we have somebody to do that.
Yeah.
But maybe we look at doing something like that we just do something to move, just to give the vice president some purpose, because I've seen on a few of these other libraries, they don't even have a vice president, because there's a couple of them that don't even have a VP. It's just 3 officers. So
I do think that committees is one of the things that's spelled out in the district library law under president. It's one of the few things that is actually in the law. I don't have it in front of me, but I do think that, and I don't know that putting in the bylaws is something that we can change because it's part of the law as
I
far as
wonder
committees,
I
but
wonder
it's,
if the president can delegate that responsibility responsibility.
Potentially, yeah.
And if she can, or the president can, I should say, I shouldn't say she, because it's a she now,
Yeah.
and it could be a he later.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah.
something to be aware of.
Yeah,
'cause
no,
I-
let's
yeah.
look into that. I mean, that's what this conversation's about, right?
Yeah.
It's bringing things up, and then we can go back to it. But yeah, I don't want just one person being, that's my whole thing. Like, one person shouldn't be,
Mhm.
even if it was the vice president, let's use the current board situation, if it was me, I would say the vice president will bring suggestions to the board to vote on,
Mhm.
and let the board vote, so that we don't have it just, I can come and say, here are the 5 people we have put on this committee, here's why we're using these people. I can talk to backgrounds of why we're putting people, like, we're gonna have like some sort of financial committee, we don't need people that don't have any sort of finance background. We want people that actually know finance in that, right? So you'd actually vet people, do the right thing, not just pick friends and throw them on. Well, that's the idea,
And hoping that you have someone on the board that has financial experience.
Do you have any ideas for, and this may not be a concern for this board, but I've seen it at other libraries, where there are certain people who are reluctant to be on a committee and do the extra work, so for like evening out the responsibility kind of.
yeah, and that's something that goes on even here, like, we need to make sure the responsibility is a little bit more spread all over the place. So, I think we have a very good board overall, but I think some people could definitely step up and do a little more. So,
I was not insinuating that.
No, I know,
I'm just putting that in the record.
I have no problem saying it.
Okay, so that's gonna be discussed later.
I do think that we need to come up with an idea of what committees we do want to have.
Yeah.
You know, I mean.
At least standing ones, you mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we should have some committees. Like, I think having a financial committee wouldn't be a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
I think having a community committee where you have some community members, like Elliot, who is clearly a library user and is very vested in the library,
Mm-hmm.
having somebody like him on there with other members of the community, of course.
Did you say as standing committees?
There, yes, so
Standing
the
committees.
state library has certain standing committees that a lot of libraries use as their format for standing committees. Like there is a personnel committee that meets once a year usually to evaluate the director, for example, that's a standing committee. There is a financial committee that discusses things like investments and usually involves the treasurer, for example.
Yeah.
So I can bring
I
that to
think
our
that we
next
really need a
meeting.
financial committee, especially right now, because we don't have any, we have an accounting firm, but we don't have any.
We don't have a
Advisor.
business manager. We
Yeah.
don't have- And I mean, that's a conversation, but
Right.
you need that. But I think you do a finance committee, you need a bylaw committee, which we have right now.
Or policy committee in general.
Bylaw
yeah.
slash policy.
Yeah.
I mean, those are two right off the top, I think that we need to definitely have, because,
Building and grounds wouldn't be a bad idea either.
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah, why not, right? I mean, that's 3 committees right now.
I think
Okay.
personnel is, because we have the union at this point, it's brand new, I think maybe that is okay to not jump onto right now, right? And maybe
Yeah.
In the future, but
And as far as reviewing you, that's gonna be the board
Mhm.
anyway, so, I mean, I'm not overly worried about that one right now, as much as getting some of these other things in place.
Yeah. There's also on many libraries a safety committee that is sometimes standing, might be worth considering.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a huge topic at this next meeting, so
Mhm.
I think that's, yeah, we may need to look into that. So, but I definitely like those, the finance, bylaw policy and building and grounds, I think are really important.
Mhm.
So,
quorum was pretty straightforward.
yeah, I don't see,
I didn't have any questions on, comments on that. Duties of officers, we're talking about rearranging some of that.
yeah, and one of the things that I wanted to bring up, long ago, that I read here actually, give me 1 second just to find it. And I brought this up in the past. I'm sorry. I want to read Zach's too. Of course, I won't find it that quick.
I need to step away for the restroom. I'll be right back. Sorry.
Well, now you have time, so.
Yeah, I know I read it in here. It was basically, and there's a couple of them. Oh, here it is. I'll wait till
Okay.
Valerie gets back so that way. But a couple of them have this. It's, yeah, I'll wait.
Yeah,
It's hard
makes
to.
sense.
No, but I think this is the good start of going through ours, because there's some other stuff in some of these that I've looked at that I'm like, we could adopt some of that, but let's go through ours first
Yeah.
and see what we really want to do first, so.
Yeah, and going through our own makes us aware of what we're lacking and what we need to change, and then we have all these other examples to give us ideas,
Yeah,
and then we can bring the ideas that we think are good and make
Yeah.
recommendations, and that will be a really long meeting too.
maybe not, right? Like, if everybody reads through the bylaws, and maybe it's one of those things we do the tweaks to ours first, bring it to the board, and let's set that, and then let everybody know we're gonna add stuff to it, and then come back to the board with the additions, then maybe that's a good way to do it, so we get this in place the right way, like fixing numbers to things and making things look how they should. That'd be interesting. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. That's why it's so fun. I mean, we have, 9 different libraries we're comparing. We have 10 library bylaws right here, so anybody who thinks we're not doing our homework on this
Right.
is sadly mistaken.
So it's kind of exciting that we get to, redo this and make it
Absolutely.
perfect for our, or not perfect, nothing's perfect, but,
No.
the best that we can for our library, so.
Yeah, I think that, and I think that's the big thing is, Elliot mentioned it hasn't been done in years.
Right, there's the one thing in here about the collection development policy being reviewed every 2 years, and it hasn't been reviewed since I've been on the board in 2019, so.
Yeah,
I
so
don't know
that's
when the
5
last
years
time,
already, so.
And there's so many things happening with that right now.
Yeah, well, and like one of the things that I, like, so whose is this? I don't even know whose board this is. No. But like it says, like even for like a new trustee orientation, the board and the library director will conduct a formal orientation for all new trustees within 3 months of the day the new trustee joined the board.
Yeah, I think I added something in my notes too, like,
Yeah, I mean, my trustee thing was, here's your bylaws, here's your manual, and I did the total with Rich, but
Right.
other than that, there's no, anything that I learned was on my own. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I went and read countless Illinois laws until my eyes hurt.
yeah, this is our opportunity to fix that.
Oh, here's actually, in this library, they have 2 standing committees, finance and facilities,
There we go, we're right on
so.
track with that.
So one of the things that I'm waiting for you to come back, because I don't want to know. So I'm reading this out of the Morton Grove bylaws, and I believe Northbrook or Stoke, somebody else has this also from the ones that we had prepared. Each officer should be elected at the regular April meeting in even numbered years and shall serve a term of 2 years. The election shall be presided over by the outgoing president. No trustee should hold more than one office at a time, nor serve consecutive terms in the same office. The election to fill a vacancy for 1 year, but basically it's saying that we do it right after the election and that nobody serves more than the 2-year term in that particular seat. So like I couldn't be vice president again when the next election comes up.
Is it just consecutively, like, so you could be elected vice president again 2 years later?
Yeah, so it says the election of the trustee to fill a vacancy for a 1-year duration or less in the office shall not prohibit the trustee from being elected to serve consecutive full term in the same office. Nomination, it just basically says that you can't do it consecutive. So like I could be vice president again, I just can't do it for 4 years.
Isn't it 2 years?
No, I'm saying I couldn't do it back to back
Okay,
years. So
okay.
it is 2 years.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be able to do it for 4 years. I could do it for 3 years if somebody stepped down from, like, let's say I resigned today. Somebody could step in as vice president. They'd still be put as vice president again, but they
Okay.
couldn't get elected into that, or appointed into that position for more than 2 years.
So you could be vice president for 2 years, and then secretary for 2 years, and then vice president again.
Correct. Or you could be, I mean, even, I remember when my wife was on the PTO board, how they did it was secretary, and then you got your feet wet as secretary, and then you went up to vice president, and you got your feet wet as vice president, and you became the president. So it was like, you're learning each step as you go.
Mhm.
So even something like that may be beneficial, but then you're locking people into spots that you may not have in. So, but definitely putting some sort of thing of a term on there.
Mhm.
I think we should definitely, and reading this on multiple different things, I think we should do that. So
Mhm.
I think we should look into doing that. That we can't,
So bringing up that we don't have back-to-back terms in the same office.
yeah. And I mean, Morton Groves was really good and detailed about like their like they only have 3 officers. They have a president, secretary, and treasurer, but they really broke down detailed of what each one's responsible for.
Mhm.
I'm not saying we should get rid of the vice president, because we have that there, but I think we should give the vice president some more responsibility than just run a meeting if the president's not around.
Mhm.
So.
Do you have any suggestions for which responsibilities?
You know, I'd have to see legally what falls under the president and what the president could.
There aren't very many parameters. I mean, I can go, if you want, I can print out the related law and bring it in, because we are, just for the public's sake, I talked to the OMA, and as long as we're on topic for what's on the agenda, we are allowed to add to what's in the packet for today being discussed, as long as it's related to the bylaws and comparing other bylaws. So I can go print a copy out, but I do not remember many things outlined for any of the officers in the law, which means that mostly the board can control what those are.
So why don't we, instead of making you go back out and print it, why don't we just use that for our next meeting and bring that back,
Perfect.
and then we have that. If we're gonna have 4 offices, then let's utilize the 4 offices,
Mhm.
whether it's now or later. I mean, you're gonna have 4 people that deserve to have some sort of responsibility, so. Yeah, I mean, like I said, if it's one of those things that the committees could even be delegated and vice presidents over the committees to check with the committee heads and then give a report back to the full board, then let's do that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that alone will take up some time for a vice president for sure.
Yeah. That sounds fine. I was wondering in the first part, duties of officers, if we wanted to add something about separating governance from administration, or like a line in there about what trustees are responsible for in a broad sense, as opposed to what the director is responsible for.
Yeah, I'd also like some sort of thing on the duty, and I don't know, it may have to be another section, right? Like, because we're talking, we will add things at some point, but I would like some sort of thing in here to govern the trustees for their actions and their behavior towards staff and their behavior in general. One of the things that I really didn't like in the trustee manual, where I felt like it gave the trustees free rein to do whatever they wanted. Us as trustees are here to help make decisions on the library. You're here every day to run the library day to day. I run my business, Becky's a librarian and runs her area. Like, that's what we do. We're here as a volunteer position to help what we think is best for the community, but not the day-to-day stuff. And I'd love to have something spelled out to protect the staff and our administration.
I was thinking that as part of maybe, and I'm written on the back here about the orientation stuff that we were just talking about. So I don't know if maybe that, as part of orientation, we have a document that's like a code of conduct for trustees.
Yeah, that's
And
perfect.
Or a code of ethics.
code of ethics and a code of conduct, because they can be separate things. And yeah, so I think that's something that needs to be added to, is like we were talking about, maybe when you're in the bathroom, I'm not sure about orientation for the
Yeah.
trustees, when you have time to develop that.
Yeah.
And we can spell it out, what those separate things are, and we're gonna give it a time limit.
We do have a parameter for an orientation, and I could also suggest, we have put in the delegation of authority policy, which is still being edited before it's published, but there is language specifically from the trustees' fax files about the difference between individual trustees and the board as a collective. We could use the same language in the bylaws, or even require that the trustees' fax file be something that is what this board will follow as a policy instead of just as a recommendation. That's something that we could consider.
Yeah, we just need to do something, because you guys, the people who work here shouldn't fear trustees. It shouldn't be a fear factor, and that's how a lot of it's been over the last, 2 years prior to Becky taking over as president. So I just want to make sure that we don't have where, I walk in the building, I want people to be happy to see me, not upset that there's a trustee in the building.
And I don't think, at least in my recent experiences, I think that is moving in a positive direction, and having these conversations is really helpful for staff morale and understanding that there are talks about some separation between management and governance. And I do
Holding
appreciate
trustees
that.
accountable for the way they behave.
Yeah, that's the big thing.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which, brings us, if we had something in there that trustees had to sign and agree to during their orientation period. I mean, I know there's not really anything we can do if they don't, right? But at least it's putting them on the spot and making them know that this is what you're signing up for, and this is what you're promising to do.
Well, that's the thing. Is there something, and this is probably a long question, if you violate the bylaws multiple times as a trustee, is there something we could do?
There are public sanctions. We would have to talk to the library attorney, but there is a sanction process that can be done legally. That is the only thing that I am aware of legally.
Is that when you censure?
Censure,
Censure,
sorry,
it's
not
censuring.
censure,
You can
censure.
censure a trustee. Actually, I found something yesterday interesting on, did I not send it to you? I was gonna send it to you. I found something on the Ansel Glink website about hostile boards and how to handle things. And one of the things they had in there was censuring a trustee, which I know they recently did, and was it Downers Grove they did that recently?
I haven't seen, I'm not sure.
Yeah, the only thing with Downers Grove is not a library district
Yeah.
where it's elected.
Mhm.
They're appointed by Downers Grove Village.
But the censure process is possible for district libraries, because it's also possible for elected officials throughout the state.
No, that's okay. I'm just saying, I think they moved to remove that person from the board, is what the ultimate decision was, and they were pushing it up to the village, the Downers Grove board, and they were gonna remove that person. I know we don't have that ability, but I'd like to know what ability we do have. I mean,
Yeah.
once it happens once, okay,
Right.
let's talk about this.
Mhm.
It's 3, 4, 5 times. We need to be able to do something about that and hold people accountable. We're all
When-
adults,
There is a possibility of putting in the bylaws, but I do think we'll also learn more from the parliamentary training of potentially removing someone from a public meeting based on behavior, and that could be added to the bylaws as well. That way the board agrees that these are our standards of behavior, and also the consequences that the board agrees on collectively for whatever may happen.
Okay. Yeah, we just gotta look into that from a legal aspect, because I don't know legally how you
Right,
take an elected official out of here unless it's pretty bad.
right.
Everybody has an opinion, right?
Well, you could put it to a vote as well, to the board. If there's activity, either during a meeting or during whatever behaviors are considered unacceptable by the board as a collective,
Yeah.
then you could put it to a vote and say, we collectively as the board believe that at this point, this person should be removed, or there should be a 10-minute break, or, as we've done in board meetings before, but it might be a good idea to spell that out too, as far as code of conduct.
I think we need a section for code of conduct,
Yeah.
code of ethics, 2 different sections. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I was just skimming through, there's ethics and things all over the place that we can use as examples from different libraries.
Mhm.
So I think that's, and again, that's something we could add and figure out where it goes, but we definitely need that, so.
Mhm.
Okay.
I was wondering also, and I'm sorry, can we,
Mhm.
and for B here, we're on 8, duties of officers, B, about filling vacancies in one of the offices. Do we want to add in the new law about how we are supposed to go about filling vacancies, or no?
Or at least mention the law
Yeah,
in the
because
90
that
days.
was, made directly in response to what happened here, so I don't know if we want to make sure
That's true.
that in the future we are aware of
Mhm.
how that has to happen.
I think that's a good idea
Yeah,
to cite the law.
yeah, absolutely, because there is a law in place now for that.
For secretary, it has that the secretary's responsibilities include certifying and submissions of reports, ordinances, etc. It doesn't, and I don't know if we want to, but it doesn't have anything about being responsible for the closed session minutes.
Oh, we should have, yeah, we should have something in there. I think actually, hold on one second, let me double check something. It was ours or somebody else. I know there's somewhere in here, like what I saw that it said that somebody is responsible for that.
In
Maybe-
our bylaws, it says the secretary may delegate duties.
Right.
I will bring the copy of the actual district library law with us next time, but
Okay.
I think that minutes are part of the law related to the secretary.
Okay,
And we should outline that in the bylaws as well, just to be very clear. At my previous library, and I know here we do it as well, it was specifically spelled out, it was voted on by the board, that the minutes would be done by the executive director or the administrative assistant or whatever position. And it was put specifically in the bylaws so that people know it was voted on by the board for that to be delegated.
yeah, I mean, some of these things, even in other libraries, as I read it, it's like, oh, they should have it one day before the prior meeting, so it's like some of their stuff in their bylaws is even an OMA violation, because you have to have it out there to the public for 48 hours, so it's like, not gonna say who's, I read it in, but.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely think we should spell, the one thing that I've taken from a lot of these is they're very detailed,
Mm-hmm,
and
Ours
there's
is
not,
not.
there's not many very et ceteras in there.
mm-hmm.
You know, again, not to spell out anybody's, but it's like, I'll do it this way, but like, that's the paragraph for treasurer.
Mm-hmm.
We have like 3 sentences.
Mhm.
That's for secretary. We have 2 sentences. So it's, to get more detailed and really do a deep dive into it.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
My question in this section is that I have not seen, especially under duties of officers, anything about executive director, since I am not an officer of the board.
Executive directors.
It's in
direction.
ours, but I've never seen that in anybody else's bylaws,
Oh.
that the director is under the officers section.
Because you're not, that's what you're saying, you're not an
Yeah, I'm
officer,
not
so
an
why is it under
officer.
this
Yeah.
part of the board
Well,
bylaws?
then let's make it a separate section
Yeah.
for the executive director. I'm okay with that.
That makes sense. And maybe we can add in there that part about the review, the annual review,
Mhm.
or whatever else we need to
Yeah.
add, and
Let's do
that would
that.
belong in a director's responsibilities.
Oh, while we're under executive director, let's talk about the, when things are delivered to the board, since we talked about some, in the trustee manual, it's Friday, this is Saturday.
What section is that under
It's in the
now?
executive director,
Yeah,
it
it's the
says
next
shall be
page.
furnished
Oh.
by Saturday, probably page 7.
Right,
Okay,
I would still like to keep it as Friday, if that's okay. That gives us, you know, the weekend, a lot of times
it's
is.
very helpful to have
yeah.
the weekend for that,
Mhm.
especially depending how much stuff is in there to read. Even
And-
Friday is not enough sometimes.
Sometimes it's not, but I'll take Friday where I can, because there's times that I'm busy on Saturday, but I'm not busy on Sunday and vice versa.
Mhm.
So it just, it helps. So,
That's fine, and that has been what we've been practicing,
Right.
except for once.
yeah, but, so let's keep it,
Yeah.
but let's make it official in
Mhm.
here.
But should that go under the agenda section instead of the executive director section?
That's a good clue. It probably should. Well, yeah.
It's not the agenda though,
Yeah,
it's the
not the
packet.
agenda, it's the
Okay.
packet to it. So you'd have.
So
to-
prepare the executive director shall prepare an agenda and packet for each meeting? Or I don't, maybe we just need to change it and add packet in because it's not clear.
I think it fits better under organization meetings than it does under the executive director section. I mean, I know that might be a little nitpicky, it may not matter either way, but just the way I'm reading this, I think it makes more sense for the organization of meetings.
Okay, so then let's make I mean, I'm okay with making a subcategory of, make it,
Like it would be after the E agenda
Yeah,
part, then make
so-
it F
yeah.
instead of committees.
Yeah.
F would be,
Packets. Committees.
and then committees would be G, right? Is that
Yep.
what we're- Okay,
Well, committees should actually be a whole section by itself. It shouldn't be under organization meetings. I think committees are a separate thing, in my opinion. So like, committees should actually be like 7, and then quorum should be like, and I'm not even sure if quorum should have its own thing versus being in the organizational meetings.
Yeah, meeting organization, yeah.
Because I think that you could probably take the whole quorum section and bring that right into number 6 here, which is organizational meetings.
Yeah.
Because that's all talking about
yeah,
the stuff that has to happen in a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move to 6, and then committees, we should make number 7 then.
Going back to page 7 though, my point of this is there's a lot in here about executive director, but I don't usually see the expectations of the executive director within the bylaws. It's usually a separate thing. Bylaws usually govern the board. And I think this, if anything, this section on executive director expectations would go under the delegation of authority policy related to my position. Does that make sense?
It does, but I think having it in the bylaws may protect the executive director's position a little easier.
Okay.
Only because, again, it's a supermajority vote to change something in here. It's not just a majority or something that they could put in place over, anybody could put in place over what's in here. I'm okay taking the whole delegation of authority and putting it under executive director in the bylaws. I mean, personally,
I would be comfortable with that.
I'm totally okay with that. I don't know how you feel about that, but
I have to think about it, it's just so many things, there's like
Yeah.
so many things. So, because we're talking about, one option is to take out the stuff about the executive director, take that out of the bylaws, another option is to add in the delegation of
Of authority.
authority
Mhm.
to the
To the bylaws.
bylaws.
It's something we can
I
think
think I need
about.
to think about them. Taking out or adding on.
yeah, I'm not sure I'm comfortable taking out, because taking out then a simple majority is allowed to change and
Mhm.
do whatever somebody may feel like with the executive director versus having it in here, you really need that supermajority to make that change.
Mhm.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, the biannual statement needs to be followed.
Yeah, I think that I don't think we need to change it, I think we just need to follow it.
Yeah, maybe it's one of those things that we do when the new president is sworn in, that they have to do within 60 days.
We could add a parameter like that in here.
I think that it should be the entire board that's doing it.
Yeah, but like the president makes sure it gets put on the agenda. It's a president's role of making sure that this is reviewed by the president and brought to the whole board. Even, or again, this could be one of those things that the vice president takes care of. You know,
Mhm.
do we have the vice president take care of biannual statement, looking at everything and then presenting it to the whole board so the board could vote on it after each election. I don't know. Bids and contract, I'm sorry.
Okay. Bids and contracts.
This is usually another thing that is a separate policy,
Okay,
and it's gonna be, the purchasing policy that we're gonna be talking about at next week's meeting governs things like this, but it's not usually part of the bylaws because it's not a board expectation for
Okay.
bids and contracts.
so then we just need to make a policy for it, oh, like,
Mhm. And there's one on the agenda for next month's meeting,
okay,
next week's meeting.
so out of bylaws into separate policy.
Amendments and miscellaneous or? Amendments, I didn't have anything, that's pretty basic.
Yeah. That's fine. Do we, sorry, go ahead.
So miscellaneous is about using parliamentary procedure and Robert's rules, and then there's a paragraph about liability and trustees being insured, or covered for things, and I don't know, do we wanna add something in about one trustee suing another trustee, or is that not? It's kind of water under the bridge, I don't know.
Yeah, I think we just, I think that may just be water
Okay.
under the bridge at this point.
I don't think
Hopefully,
there's
right?
anything that we can legally put in here related to that.
Okay.
Not that I'm a legal expert, of course, but I don't think that there is. And the section on Robert's Rules does say the board reserves the right to waive Robert's Rules of Order. Do you want that to fall under a supermajority vote as well and spell that out in this section?
Well, anything in this document is a supermajority vote, right?
No, to change the document itself is a supermajority vote, but I'm saying if the board wants to waive Robert's Rules of Order when deemed
Oh.
necessary,
Do we want that
do
to
you
be a
want the
majority vote?
process of waiving Robert's Rules to be spelled out here? Because it's not spelled out of how the board would waive that or when.
Question.
And that may be a question for after we have the parliamentary training
Yeah.
to consider at our next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we got through ours.
Yeah. So we need to figure out what we wanna do next, right? Or how we wanna go about,
I think next, I'd like to review the document that you were saying about, like, responsibilities for each position. What you were saying you could print out. I'm drawing a blank.
The one from the law,
Yes,
the district library law,
yeah,
I can go get that now if we want to include that in today's packet, or we can talk about it at the next meeting. But like I said, the law has limited duties for each officer. Most of these are determined by the individual library board, but we should make the comparison, absolutely.
I think if you get it to us at some point,
Okay,
like, soon, to
Yeah.
review for the next time, right? Cause
Okay.
I don't know that we wanna sit here and review it right now.
sure.
yeah.
Um,
And
So-
are there any from the other,
Well,
other
there's,
policies that we've looked at? Are there sections or recommendations that the committee should be reviewing further for discussion at our next meeting?
yeah,
Yeah.
there's some good stuff in some of these.
I'm gonna be honest and tell you that I didn't read through all of them.
I read through the ones that we had.
Yeah, so I think we definitely, given,
We need more time. for
we
the
need
next
time
one.
to sit
Okay.
down ourselves and read through everything, and then also read through what we said we wanted to look into changing, and maybe we can all come back then next time and say, here, we talked about changing this, here's some good things that I saw, and
Yeah.
ways to do that, and,
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay with that.
I do have a request that we consider having someone, and I've seen this in other libraries as the president, but just someone delegated from the board to be the liaison for the director, so that the board is having the conversations with trustees about what the collective board wants the library to work on, and then that comes from one person. Not that I'm saying I don't want to talk to all of the trustees, of course, but sometimes I get directives from one trustee or another, and I'm not sure if it is a directive of the board, and I think it would be helpful to have a liaison potentially, to consider that as part of an officer duty, maybe.
The only concern I have about that
Mhm.
is if you give that power to one particular board member
Mhm.
and they don't like something that's being run up the ladder, it may never get communicated properly back or forth.
Or even parameters like that within the bylaws that say, okay, if we want something on the agenda, or we want the library to work on something, perhaps everyone emails the director, something like that, some type of parameters,
You know
right?
what, that's an interesting point. You just said that. One of the things that we should, in my opinion, we should look at is, and just so it's on there, right, is when do you, we should be sending agenda items to Becky, the president and the executive director.
Mhm.
We should have something in here when those items need to be over
Mhm.
by.
yeah, 'cause
Yes.
that was in the trustee manual, right?
Correct,
But
it
yeah, so
was.
that's something we wanna add.
And that's what I
Yeah.
mean, there's some things in there
Yeah.
that are valuable to look at
Oh,
adding into
absolutely.
here.
Mhm.
So maybe that's part of the next meeting too. We look at the old trustee manual and see if there's anything we want to pull out of there.
Mhm.
And then the officers, the law of the officers and stuff like that,
Mhm.
and go from there. That way we could, because that was definitely something I think that should be in there, because if somebody sends you something today, you shouldn't have to put it into and those packets are being made.
Right, which
Mhm.
happened, last month?
Mhm.
Yeah, so let's make sure we do that too.
Is that something, that we can talk more about when the parliamentarian is here, about having
Yes,
parameters for,
it's definitely a question that I think is worth asking. Just because again, and I'll just speak to my experience at my previous library, and what I'm aware of from other directors is that typically the president can get advisement from other trustees, and then one person from the board will come and say, the board is interested in you working on this project, or in the library performing this task, that type of thing, so that it doesn't wait for necessarily the next board meeting, so that operations are not slowed if the project needs to be done before the next board meeting, for example, for discussion with the public, but also so that one trustee is not saying, do this project, another trustee is saying, do this project, another trustee is saying, do this project, and the full board is not aware of these projects coming up, but my time and staff's time is being taken and prioritized on things away from projects that have been assigned by the full board, for example. So just some clarity of communication, I think, would be really helpful for operations.
mhm.
Let's think about how we can make that happen, but also not put it all into one person's lap at the same time. That's the
Mhm.
problem.
Yeah.
Because if it goes into one person, some of the stuff that other people want may never get. No matter what the board
Mhm.
decides, that one person could change.
Yeah, and also staying within OMA parameters, of course, because, trustees can't meet outside of an open meeting and discuss things, so some of that does have to be channeled through me,
Yeah.
but just the best way to do it so that the board agrees on how these things are gonna be moved forward, so that I and the staff know what to prioritize and what to work on.
We may want to look at also putting in something under, in there for if you need a consensus
Mhm.
between meetings.
That's part of what I'm asking too, is like, what method should I follow? How best would that work?
Yeah.
What is the board looking for?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we wanna try and pick a date for our next meeting?
Sure.
And like, how long do we wanna do between meetings? Because next week we have a meeting, a regular meeting.
The week after that, I will be out of town.
So we're looking, do we wanna try and meet in May?
I would think so,
Okay.
because we're trying to move this along.
Yes.
Well, do we
also.
want, or do we want to try, I guess we have like maybe May 1st, 2nd, 3rd, like around there at the beginning of May?
Mhm.
So then we can then we give everybody time to get it ready for the May meeting, so we can bring it to the
Mhm.
board.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just checking my schedule. The 3rd is the Laconi trustee banquet. So it's just the three of us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And evenings are better, right?
Not necessarily, no, as we get into May, it's probably not better.
Could you do Thursday morning, the 2nd?
I could do Thursday morning, 2nd at 10 o'clock.
Okay.
I could do 9 o'clock, well, let's do
Oh,
10
you
o'clock.
have a Superman meeting at 10 o'clock on Thursdays.
I can, but I can miss one,
You
or
sure?
we can reschedule one. We meet once a week, so we're okay to reschedule.
Okay. Otherwise, we could do Wednesday, the 1st in the evening.
Wednesday the 1st, I cannot do.
Okay.
7 o'clock, Vinny has a game.
Gotcha. All right, then 10 a.m. on
I could
May
do
2nd.
Wednesday morning if you had the morning
Yeah,
available.
I cannot.
Okay.
May 2nd, 10 a.m.
Mm-hmm. I have a lot of calendars. I know you use everything, and I can't get my family to join in the Google calendar.
Without this, we'd be lost.
All right, 10 a.m. And that will give me, I'll have till at least 12 before. So that's plenty of time. We didn't take that long today.
Yeah, I could 10 to 12 too, just
Yeah.
to be sure. So I guess we're on the other now?
Do we have other on this agenda?
Yeah, we
It's
do.
on there,
Okay.
but I don't have anything.
I know OMA compliance and everything is very big for all of these, but do we think for the next meeting, we could just do the recording? Do we need to have, I mean, right now we're taking, even though it was, whatever, 90 minutes, but it's 90 minutes is Rich's day to sit here and record this on a video versus being able to hit a button.
Right.
I mean, we have.
I'm fine with just doing it audio.
Okay,
I just
I'm
didn't
fine
want to
with
do it
that.
this time because we had agreed with the
Absolutely.
board that I just want to make it clear for everyone who's listening or watching that, at our last meeting, we agreed we would do the video recording as a board in open session. And then as we thought about it later, we realized we're taking away from staff time and that, this is a meeting of 3 people. There's really not a whole lot to see. And you can probably just get what you need by listening. So I'm okay with that.
okay.
I'm okay with it, and
Mhm.
we can talk about it in the committee report at the next board meeting to inform them and the public.
Okay.
No, we'd have to take a look, because then we still have to upload it,
What do you mean?
because you still want to have this on YouTube.
No, if we're not video recording it. So legal requirements for
No,
any.
I know the legal requirements,
Yeah.
but what you were referring to, people can listen, I'm like, but the only way people can listen is if you upload it.
Trustees can listen
Ah.
if they would like to.
And the public,
Okay.
well, the public, I guess, could technically come in and listen to a recording.
If they
wanted.
requested,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, I just
of
wanted
course.
to know if our
Yeah.
procedure will change, because, right now it goes straight to YouTube
Mhm.
immediately. So if we were recording it and then uploading it, we'd have to change our procedures, because then we just have an audio file and not a video file, and you have to do other things.
Is it possible to upload it if we wanted to,
Yeah,
the audio file?
Right.
Okay. So that's good to know if we wanted to.
Do we want to?
That may be the best thing, is just if you do the audio and then upload it, then public doesn't have to, because if somebody in the public wanted to hear it, they would have to reach out to you, and somebody would have to sit with them while they listen to it.
Because of the device that
And
we
we
have.
don't want
Yeah.
to take up time having you sit with someone to listen to it.
Like we
Just put it up there.
Okay,
audio right up to YouTube or something, that's fine.
is that okay with you, Rich?
Yeah, I'll go through and make sure that we have a procedure for it. That
Perfect.
kind of looks okay, you know, so we, I don't know if we have to apply a splash page to it,
Mhm.
because this automatically has that.
Okay.
So it actually looks presentable.
Mhm.
And so then going forward, if we have other committees for the building and grounds or financial things, we can, you know, when we discuss this next week in our report about this committee, we can say, maybe, is this what we want to do for all the committees?
Yeah,
I'm okay
and
with
it'll
Next
still
meeting,
be,
next week.
sure, it'll still
That would
be.
be much appreciated. Is there, I'm sure there's gonna be more committees.
Correct.
Yes.
And there are various times, so, scheduling becomes an issue, let alone of the rooms, let alone setting up staff.
Absolutely.
Yes, and with the audio recorder, we don't have to use this particular one.
Correct, you can go anywhere, just, you know, it has a battery, so you don't even have to plug it in.
Thank you.
Apps,
All right.
thank you.
All right, should we take a vote to adjourn the meeting?
Yeah. We make a motion, official motion to adjourn. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the bylaws committee meeting.
I'd second.
Okay, President Keene,
Yes,
Vice President Trucco,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
and it is 11:16.